In this video, I'm going to show you the interactive components that come with this interactive sketchbook package. So I'm going to open up my sketchbook so I can show you how I've arranged the components in my own sketchbook. And on the left, you'll see that I have a pocket that's entitled Work in Progress. And I've just attached this to the back of the cover. So if you start a lesson with your students and they're not able to get it glued down into their sketchbook in time, they can just tuck it in there so they have it for safekeeping for the next time they come to art. Now on the right, you'll see that I have an Elements of Art flipbook. This is one of 3 flipbooks that I've included that go over the Elements of Art in its entirety, so that you have a couple different options that you can use if you'd like. So when I open it up, you see I have a tab for color, value, line, texture, shape, form, and space. And all of the parts that you see colored in are all the parts that your students are going to be filling in to complete their flip book. Now I'm going to show you the next one, and this one is just a vertical version. Has the same information as that first one did. So I have the cover, texture, line, value, space, shape and form, and color. And you'll notice that around I've kind of doodled and added a little bit of color and design to the page. This is something that I would encourage you to have your students do because it kind of personalizes their sketchbook and makes them more invested in the stuff that they're doing in it. On the next page, I have the third option that's an overview of the elements of art. And on this one, you'll notice that the words are all colored and designed to be reflective of their meaning. So I went ahead and I did that. And then underneath each little flap, you'll see the definition of the word. So your students are going to have to match up the definition with the correct word. Now we're going to go into the element of color, and on the left you'll notice that I have this color wheel. The color wheel I did in color pencil. However, if you wanted to make this a painting activity with your students, you could absolutely do that. And then I just cut it out and glued it into my sketchbook. And there's a couple different ways that you can add to this. If you wanted to go ahead and have your students label the colors around the outside, you could do that. Or if you wanted them to just make a notation of what primary colors are, which the secondary colors are, which ones are the tertiary colors, you could do that. Then over here onto mixing colors. This first one goes over mixing tertiary colors, and there's 2 different ways that you can complete this. So on this, you'll see that it comes with the word already printed on the inside. It has the tertiary color. You have your students color over that with that color. And then on the left and right flaps, you're going to have them color in the 2 colors that they would need to mix that color. So to make red violet, I would need red and violet. Now what makes this different from this activity is that on this one, I've also colored on the outside of the flap too. So you can already see that red and purple make red violet. On this one, for the secondary colors, I did it differently because I didn't color the outside flaps. I just wrote the actual name of the color. So in this one, red and yellow mixed together to make orange, blue and red mixed together to make purple. So if you're short on time, this one's easiest to do because you're not having your students color both sides of it. Now over here we go to color schemes and expressive color. And the color scheme page is probably my favorite. So what your students are going to do is they're going to be making these little mini color wheels, and they're going to be coloring that in and attaching these color scheme covers with a brad so it can spin around. So with this analogous color one, if your students spin it, it shows them analogous color schemes. So if you need them to use an analogous color scheme in their work, this would be a great way to have them select one. Over here, I have the same thing, but this one is for complementary colors. So as I spin the wheel, you'll see that I have my complementary color pairs. And this is another great tool to have your students reference. Down here, I have a color wheel that goes over the warm colors and the cool colors. You can see that I've gone ahead and colored in all the colors there. And when I open one flap, say for example I open this, it shows you just the warm colors, and it has a definition for warm colors right here. And if I open the other side, it has the cool colors and a definition for cool colors. Now on to the expressive color page. On this one, you're going to have a whole bunch of these little flaps that have the name of a color on it. So I went ahead and I colored those the color that they are. And then underneath, you're going to be writing in words that that color can express or reflect in artwork. So for blue, you might use that to show sadness or trust or peacefulness. And you're going to do that for all the different colors. Now in this package, I've included a list of words that you could have your students sort into each of these, or you could have them come up with their own words that they think best reflect the color. Now onto my next page, we go to the element of value. First thing I have here is this little accordion book, and I'm going to open that up, and it goes over the definition of value, and then it shows you how to make a tint, shade, and tone, and that's something that your students would color in themselves. Then over here I have an example of how you can make a shape look like a form just by adding value. So you can see that this circle shape was made into what looks like a sphere just by adding that value. Then down here we have some scales. This first one is a value scale, has the definition, and your students would fill in the blanks down here. And the same type of thing that shows you how to add value with hatching and cross hatching, and then with stippling. Now on the line page, you'll see that I have a bunch of different types of lines, and I've drawn in the lines on the cover so that it's reflective of the word. And then underneath, I have words that these lines could be descriptive of, that could express. So if I use a vertical line in my artwork, it shows power, it shows strength, it can show authority. So you could have your students reference that if they needed that. Then down here, I have a little flip for descriptive lines. And this just goes over gesture lines, cross contour lines, and contour lines. Now onto the next page, we move on to texture. First thing I have is a little flip book that goes over implied texture versus real texture. Then I have a little texture rubbings mini book, and you can open that up. And this is a great way to have students do crayon rubbings that help to show real texture translated onto a two-dimensional surface. Then down here, the packet that you'll get will have these blank monsters, and then your students will go ahead and add stuff to the top of it, drawings, lines, colors, whatever they need to do to add an implied texture to that monster. Then on the right side over here, you'll see that I have a page for real texture, and you'll have your students collect materials that they can glue into their sketchbook that have texture. So for example, I have sandpaper right here. Sandpaper feels rough. I have some textured paper right here that feels bumpy. I have some glitter paper that kind of feels gritty. And then I have this little band of felt. So they wrote what it was, they wrote the texture that it has, and then you'll notice that I have these little sketches right there. And that's just showing how I would draw that particular texture if I was making it into an implied texture. Now on to the next one, we have shape and form. This one starts again with an accordion book for both of them, and it goes over geometric shapes, freeform shapes, implied shapes, and then on the form side it goes over open forms, closed forms, geometric forms, and organic forms. And those just fold back just like that. And below that I have these two little envelopes, and these envelopes hold these little flashcards, and all of the flashcards have different shapes on them. So your students are going to color those in accordingly, and then on the back they're going to write the name of that shape or form. Then they'll sort between the shapes and the forms and put them in their correct pocket, and that holds them really well. So you can see I have shapes tucked into that side too. Now over here we have a pocket that says from a shape net to a form, and this is just showing how students can take two-dimensional shapes and build them into three-dimensional forms. So there's a whole bunch of shape nets included. I have a cube one right here, and you could have your students just hold it into their hands and try to fold it together and create the shape, but as you can see it doesn't really stick very well when you do that. So I would really suggest just making this a gluing activity for your students and have them glue these forms together to create them. But if you did just want to do the folds and have them practice with that, you could just keep them in this pocket. And finally we move on to space. Over here I have a little 6-point flip going over creating the illusion of space. So on this one you're not going to get the pictures on it. You're going to have your students draw pictures that are reflective of what it's saying are the methods of creating the illusion of space. Right here, I have a little fold that goes over positive and negative space. And you'll have your student draw a picture in the middle that demonstrates positive and negative space. Down here, I have a little flip for atmospheric perspective. It goes over what that is. And then you would have your students color in this area down here to demonstrate that they know what atmospheric perspective is. And then over here, I have this little flip for the layers and artwork. So foreground, middle ground, background. So foreground, the title is really clear, it's really dark, it's crisp, like how things in the foreground would look. Then when you open that, you go to the middle ground. The middle ground title is a little bit lighter and a little bit blurrier. And then finally you open up that and you have the background. Background title is the lightest and the blurriest of all of them, so this is kind of demonstrating how atmospheric perspective actually works. Now over here, I have a mini book for 1-point perspective drawing. And this is really cool because it goes step by step with your students of how to do 1-point perspective drawings. So you could have them glue that into their sketchbook, or I would actually recommend taping it so it stays in a little bit better. And then you could have them do a drawing project below it. And finally, the last thing that I have here is my 2-point perspective mini book. So this again just goes over, has the directions for how to do 2-point perspective, and then you could have your students do an example drawing on the same page. You'll notice that I did my drawing on the right side of the book, and that's just because since we've glued so much stuff on the left side, it would be hard to do a drawing, like a pencil drawing on top of it, without kind of messing up your drawing. So I would recommend anytime you're doing a drawing project to have them do it on the right side of the book, that way it doesn't mess up their drawing. So all of these things I've included in this sketchbook.